Hi, this is Mama Gina, and tonight I am chatting with the amazing Phil Kessler. He's an author, he is a podcaster, he is a radio host, he does all kinds of amazing things. And he does something creatively that I find absolutely amazing because I don't have the patience for it, and that's write books. So, Phil, introduce yourself and tell people a little bit about what's going on with you and the books that you write, and we'll just run from there and see what comes up.
Well, you kind of covered it pretty well there in the introduction. I haven't been podcasting that much for the last several years because my podcast partner and I had a disagreement and decided to go our separate ways. But
Gotcha.
my new partner for it, he's been chomping at the bit now for 14 months to get
Oh,
things going. And my regular bills paying job kind of got in the way of getting that going, but that's changed now. So
excellent.
Pagan Musings podcast will be back very soon, and it'll be probably on at least two different sources. Going to see about keeping it on Blog Talk Radio, but KZUM Community Radio out of Lincoln, Nebraska, has a podcast channel through their website.
Oh, wow.
And since that's where I'm at every Sunday morning, anyways, doing my two radio shows, might as well just, carry it on through there.
Excellent. And may I say, you have a wonderful voice for radio. Absolutely. And
And a
that's
face
not,
to go
I'm
with
not
it.
slamming, no, 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 not the rest of it. I'm really saying you really have such a great voice for radio. I always like that resonance there that just makes people want to listen. So
Mm.
very
I think
awesome. Very
I
awesome.
think that's one of the reasons why the owner of Murphy's Magic Mess, the 2-hour show I do on Sunday mornings, wanted me to be on the show, is because I had that resonance, like you said, that she had with a previous co-host who had moved out of state.
Got you.
But yeah, I've been doing KZUM for just over 12 years, and
Wow.
that's Sunday mornings, 9 a.m. Central, for 2 hours of pagan and new age music, a little bit of secular, a little bit of humor, a little bit of, well, sometimes we make you get up and shout at the radio.
That's okay. That's
uh,
okay.
I do that more with my other show, Lavender Hill, which is a gay and lesbian news and talk program, which is on
Hmm.
right after Murphy's Magic Mess. So at 11 a.m. Central Time.
I love so much how you have remained focused through all of this because I know you've listen, the theme of my day job gets in the way is such a recurring theme through every creative's life, and I think that that's something that we wrestle with. I mean, I finally just threw the day job out 10, 11 years ago and just said I can't anymore, it's going to kill me, and I'll take whatever trade-off there is, which means a whole lot less money and in a multitude of other things, but I can do that at this point in my life. And I hear that so much from people, but I also hear a lot of creatives say, I don't have time to create because of the day job or because of all the other things I have. And you seem to find the time and you seem to find the focus to devote yourself to a lot of this anyway.
Not so much for the last year and a half, but yeah. What was it? My first book, I wrote it in less than 30 days.
Wow. Wow. That's
Well, it's
amazing to me.
it started out as a short story for an anthology. I missed the deadline. I shelved it for over a year. Found myself in a circumstance where I suddenly had time, and a friend was like, "Why don't you bring that out, dust it off, and turn it into a book
In 30 days.
in 30 days?"
Holy moly. I see NaNoWriMo going on all the time, that
Yeah,
November thing where
yeah,
people write
nano.
the skeleton of a book in 30 days. And I'm like, I couldn't even do it then. I don't know how you get that much flow. I get it musically, but I write a story that goes over 30,000 years in 5 minutes in a song, but I don't know how to do it the other way where you write a whole book that people are going to take a couple hours or 5 hours to read. It just stymies me how somebody can do that.
Well, your complete album when you get done with this installment of Ava, because I have a feeling it's going to be more than just one. Um,
This installment, yes.
yeah, the completed CD is a whole story. It's
It
got several
is.
little stories within it, but the
It
whole thing
is,
is.
but I'm not sitting down with pen or pencil to paper to write an entire book and all the dialogue. I hear all the dialogue in my
Mhm.
head. I get the story, and believe me, there's a monster backstory. I mean, this would be, if this were a written book, it would be a trilogy, literally. And there's a sequel already in my head. But I don't, maybe I don't have the discipline, or maybe it's just never going to be in my skill set. I can write fiction, a nonfiction, but to write fiction always just seems like the hardest thing in the world for me to commit to, other than the music side of it. It's kind of bizarre. We all have our own, unique ways of expressing that
Mhm.
creative flow, whatever it is. So tell me about uh the books that you're writing right now. You have a series going?
Yes, I've got the Dark of the Moon New Beginnings series. It's got 3 books currently out:
Mm-hmm.
Backfire, Waterfall, and Landslide.
Okay.
The 4th book, which I'm working on, is Tornado. Do you kind of detect a theme
I
there of the
do.
elements?
I do. I love it. I love it.
Yeah, and the main characters, um, Elaine and Sandra, they live here in the same town that I do. They live in Lincoln, Nebraska.
Okay.
They're normal, everyday, you know, workaday people. Let's see here, if I can. It's been a little bit here, so I got to remember which one's which, because I've been writing stories that are within the series
Right?
that have very little to do with them at the moment. But uh, Elaine is a hereditary witch,
Okay. Oh,
and
wow.
her best friend since junior high, Sandra, is a preacher's kid.
Oh, wow.
But the story starts out with Backfire, where Sandra is going through a nasty breakup. Elaine does what your typical 20 something witch would do, tries to do a protection spell for her best friend. And that's where you get the title of the book, Backfire.
Backfire.
It
Aha.
backfired on her. And it goes from there. I mean, by the time you've finished the first book, you've met 2 ancient Egyptian gods.
Oh, my.
In the second book, you meet a Mesopotamian god. In the third book, you go to South America.
Ooh. Oh,
And with that one, I wound up introducing like 12 new characters.
goodness.
So I went from 2 main characters and a couple of side characters to, about 6, with Sandra's, not so nice ex boyfriend and his family. And then in the third book, with these 12 new characters, which are all college kids. Why I'm writing about college kids, I don't know.
Isn't that
I'm 40
funny?
something. I've never been to a 4-year university. I've gone to a community college.
Mm-hmm.
But, I'm writing about this and bringing this and that in. And it's like, okay, so we've got Pachamama
Wow.
hanging out in Lincoln.
I love this. What a great idea.
And, all this other stuff going on. All these other ideas keep coming in. Every time a character appears,
Mm-hmm.
I get their whole story.
And that's what I want to, that's what I really want to get at here. Where does your
Mm.
inspiration come from, and how do they talk to you?
Well, like I said, with this series, it started out as a short story for an anthology that was supposed to, kind of be, what happens when spell work goes bad.
Uh-huh.
So, that was the inspiration for that. And I just, randomly came up with these 2 people, at least I thought randomly. And, they waited patiently for a year or more in the, bottom of the file cabinet when I missed my deadline. But as soon as they came walking out onto the screen again, it's like, okay, now I suddenly know what happened with Sandra's parents, what happened with Elaine's parents, how Elaine's family got involved in witchcraft, how many generations back it goes. And then Malcolm, who is Sandra's ex-boyfriend, his family and their involvement with Freemasons and all this information just keeps flooding my brain. And I kind of go, stop, let me finish the story I'm writing before I get more. And it
Oh.
doesn't help that my muse is an actual person. It's not just somebody that talks in my head.
Oh.
My muse is a very dear friend of mine out in Colorado. And I call her up from time to time, or I message her on Facebook. And as we're talking, more information's coming. She may not have anything to do with what the information is,
Uh-huh.
but if I'm struggling, she'll just start, like opening little doors, going, what if?
Oh, how wonderful to have a real life muse like in this particular manifest world,
Mm,
because I sometimes struggle. It's hard sometimes for me to even explain my process to people, because I've got these voices in my head and I am absolutely certain that they are completely real.
oh,
And
they are.
I have this whole theory worked out of how this is and why this is, that I'm able to do what I'm able to do, but I wouldn't be able to do it if that theory fell apart, And wow, count yourself so fortunate that you have someone that you can talk to about these kinds of things, because um a couple of people that I've talked to about their creative process, they go, "Yeah, I just really try not to talk to people who don't understand me," which is most of them.
Yeah, and I can understand that. If I didn't have
Mm-hmm.
Rhiannon, I've named her in the dedication of all three books. So if you've read the books, you know a little bit about her. I've known Rhiannon for 27 years.
Wow.
Ever since I was, a tiny little teeny bopper witchlet. And she's been there in one capacity or another for me, as a friend, as a confidant, as another mother. And now she's fulfilling the role of muse. She called herself the nano muse when I started doing NaNoWriMo,
That's great.
which everything I've ever done for NaNoWriMo has not been printed. It has not
Really?
gone to publication. It's the stuff that I do just to do it. When I try to give myself that kind of a 30-day deadline,
Mm-hmm.
I get sidetracked. I go off on research. Doesn't mean those stories aren't going to eventually happen, but I get sidetracked because it's not that free flow.
I've got you. I hear you. I I think that that time is never wasted, though,
Oh
because
no.
anything that we do to hone our craft, whether that's research even about something that we don't think that we're going to going to use in that moment. um for me, it might be taking classes on something online, in this timeout we've been given from the universe in the last year and a half.
Mm.
Or learning to play, something that I've never played before, just, that has nothing to do with the music I'm writing. It seems like all of that comes to bear at some point where it just makes me a better vessel and more apt to be able to create the thing that they want me to create.
Hmm.
I don't know if that makes sense or not,
Oh,
but
it does. It does. Um, a friend of mine likes to pull on the idea of Tony Stark from the Marvel Universe.
yeah.
When did you become an expert on such and such a thing? Last night. I got bored.
I love it. I love it.
So yeah, I get lost in the YouTubes, or I start, type in a simple search into Google or whatever, and before I know it, 3, 4 hours have gone by. I know more than I needed to know for what I'm writing, and it gives, at least in my head, it gives me a better understanding of what's going on, and that really comes to bear with my psychological thrillers.
Nice. Nice,
Because Dark
nice.
of the Moon is, it's urban fantasy, magical realism.
Right.
I love, though, reading and writing horror and psychological thriller. I spend hours upon hours binging things on streaming networks and all that would probably make some people go, I'm not sure I want to be around this person. I had a friend read the opening to a book that I'm working on. And when he got done reading just the first like 2 pages, he put it down, leaned back in his chair. We were at a restaurant,
Mm-hmm.
leaned back in his chair, and he said, I'm glad I'm your friend.
That you could think such horrible things.
No, because he was hoping that that meant that he wouldn't be one of the victims if I wasn't a writer.
Right. That is
You know,
so
a
wild.
lot of people that write murder mysteries and stuff like that, if they didn't
Uh-huh.
have that outlet, they'd probably be institutionalized.
You think?
Oh yeah, I mean, have you ever met Stephen King?
I have not met him, but I've seen him in some interviews, and I've got to tell you, I grew up reading Stephen King because that was my generation. Was when he
Mm-hmm.
was, Salem's Lot and all of that stuff. I mean, right from the beginning, um, and he definitely disturbed me. There were scenes in The Shining in that book
Mm-hmm.
that I literally had to walk away from several times. I mean, I was a teenager, but
Yeah.
it so deeply affected me. And there's a short story that he wrote. I think it was called Ladyfingers. I'm not sure, but it was a horrible, horrible story about someone who gets shipwrecked by themselves on an island, and he winds up consuming his own fingers at some point because he goes mad. And it is the most it's like 7 pages of, oh my god, I can't believe I read that, and I can't believe anybody thought of that. And it's
Mm-hmm.
you know and so, yeah, I mean, I can imagine that somebody that thought, like, yeah, I guess it is a really great outlet.
Yeah. Well, before his accident, he was just a major a-hole.
Really.
Yeah, a lot of his fans that just loved his books and met him were like, that is nothing like what I expected.
Huh.
He talked down to me, just had such disdain for the common person. But after his accident, he turned into almost a completely different person. You wouldn't necessarily see it in his writing. And I will freely admit, I've only read 2 of his novels from cover to cover.
Okay.
The Stand,
Uh-huh.
before its first TV
Right,
miniseries,
right, right, right. Yep.
and Carrie.
Oh yeah.
The
Oh
only two
yeah.
I've ever read cover to cover. I
Huh.
used to watch, Hammer films and, Fright Night type stuff, you know, as a kid, and I'd read Stephen King to go to bed
Wow.
because
Yeah.
I needed to be able to control what my mind was seeing, and I could do that by reading.
Interesting.
If I was watching
Interesting.
something, I didn't have that control because it was right there on the screen. But if I was reading it, my mind's eye theater could, tone it down, put it in claymation or something. And I'd be like, okay, it's time for bed now.
That's so cool. Do you when you were young, did you think about being a writer?
Oh, yeah. My parents never thought I would get into reading,
Okay.
believe it or not. The man who has probably 5,000 books in his personal library, as
Mhm.
a kid, didn't enjoy reading.
Wow.
But when they found out I needed these,
Ah.
you couldn't keep books out of my hands.
Interesting. Interesting.
And would you believe I overcame dyslexia in order to write?
That is amazing. That See, this is why I think sometimes we're so compelled to do the things that to create the things that are coming through us, that the obstacles just don't matter. We're going to
Mm-hmm.
find a way around those obstacles. This is very interesting to me. That's huge. I mean, overcoming dyslexia, learning how to compensate for that, and wow, amazing.
It every once
Amazing.
in a while still comes through when I'm writing. That's why I have proofreaders.
Good for you. And that's just another way to get around that obstacle, right?
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I tell people that want to write, just write it. It doesn't matter how good it is the first time you throw it out on the screen or scribble it onto the page. Just get the story out. You can go back and you can embellish, or you can take away, or you can change what it is that it's saying, as long as you first get the story out.
Yes, yes, yes. It's interesting when I'm creating music, especially when I'm, well, through the whole process. But I've really noticed it in the recording phase when I'm in my computer and I'm putting all the parts in. I'll take a part and put it in through the whole song. Just throw it in. And
Mm-hmm.
then I will go back and listen and I will take things out. You know, it's like I go, I'm just going to throw everything in there and then I'll go back in later and get the edit and the erase button, and just take out all the things that don't belong to the story,
Oh yeah.
and yeah, I still think it's much harder to do writing a book.
Mm-hmm. Well, with Waterfall, when I was writing that and introduced Malcolm, Sandra's ex, and his really dark family, I wrote some stuff in there, some dialogue between his father and his uncle.
Hmm.
And when I went back over and read it, I'm like, this doesn't fit in the story. But I now have some backstory on these two that can be used elsewhere.
Nice,
So
nice.
very
So you keep all
little,
that stuff.
yeah, very little actually gets permanently deleted. It just gets removed from the document. I've got probably, you know, 100 gigs, not gigs, 100 megabytes of data that's just backstory information. Sometimes it's not even really assigned to a character yet. It's just, okay, this happened. I got to
Right.
figure out how it ties in.
That's yeah.
So, yeah, somehow or another, I've got to bring John Dee into the modern era.
Yeah.
Because he has something to do with what's going on
Oh
somewhere in
my
one of the
gosh.
stories.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy. That will be a lot of fun.
Mm.
Working some Enochian angels and
Oh, yeah.
that is so awesome. So I'm curious about you getting the idea down. Do you do that with pencil and paper or do you do that on the computer?
If I want to be able to read it, I better put it on the computer.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
my doctor's nurses can't read my handwriting.
Ah, okay. All
I
right.
have intention tremors, so my
Okay.
hands shake nonstop.
So you
Um, yeah, it's like when we met, when you were
Mhm.
in Lincoln. I
Yeah.
don't even want to think how many years ago now. I wasn't shaking from nerves of being around people. I was just shaking because that's what my body does.
Oh, wow.
I don't know if you could really notice, because I've pretty well gotten good at hiding that from people. If
Cool.
I get really frustrated with a situation, though, forget it. You're gonna know it.
Yeah.
Sometimes you'll hear it in my voice. Anybody who listens to my radio shows, when I get really passionate about something, my voice starts to shake.
Oh, wow. Good to know.
And with Lavender Hill, the LGBTQIA news and talk program, sometimes I get really passionate about things. And, I'm really glad that I have that brain filter to, cut out the FCC stuff, the stuff that's
Right?
going to get me yanked from the air. It's like, okay, I'm at the radio station, not at home on the podcast.
Mhm. Got you. Got you. Oh my gosh. So, how do you know when something's done?
When I'm told by somebody else that it's done, to be perfectly honest,
Okay.
I
That's fair.
my muse is my first proofreader, and usually what she's reading for is the story. Is it there?
Mhm. Okay.
She might point out a couple of little, typos or grammatical errors or what have you, but she's reading to see if the story is really there
Story
and done.
continuity. Okay. All
Yeah.
right.
And that's why it's so hard for me to do short stories. I've done short stories, and every single one of them, except for my flash fiction,
Mhm.
and even some of those, when I'm done, quote unquote, send it to be published, and somebody reads it, they're like, where's the rest of the story? Yes, you completed what was going on, but where's the rest of the
The rest
story?
of the story. Got you.
It's like I
Got you.
even wrote a flash fic of a demon copy editor.
Oh my. Awesome.
And I believe that was under one of my pen names because I publish as myself, Philip J. Kessler, as RevKess, which is
Mm-hmm.
the magical stuff for all intents and purposes.
Right.
Joseph Castle, which is the really adult entertainment,
Okay. Got you.
and P.I. Stolp.
My goodness. You've got all
And
kinds of
yeah,
nom de plumes.
she writes mystery and contemporary romance.
I love it.
Yeah, it's like
And it's easier to be a woman in the romance field.
kind of, sort of, yeah. Even though what a lot of people started out reading with romance novels was what they were forced to read in school.
Oh, yeah.
And at that time, when those books were being written, it was easier to get published as a man.
Interesting.
But yeah, I use
Interesting.
P.I. Stolp because, well, she's Phyllis Irene, and that's who I would have been if I had been born a girl.
Interesting. Oh my
And
goodness.
the Stolp, the spelling I use, is a variation on my mother's family name.
Very cool. Very cool
And
indeed.
Joseph Castle is my middle name with a different translation of what Kessler means.
Aha. So, do you do those voices feel different to you? Besides the fact
Some
that they write in different genres, do those voices actually like come out differently?
From time to time they do, especially when Phyllis is writing. It's I don't want to say it's a softer way of writing because it's not. I mean, she's getting into some of the nitty gritty with with the mysteries and all that, but or the fade to black scenes with the contemporary romance. But the word choices sometimes are a little different for what the narrator is thinking or telling you, as opposed to the dialogue.
Very interesting.
And when Joseph's writing, it's kind of like, oh, no holds barred. It's just whatever comes out of his mouth is what comes out of his mouth. And yeah, definitely gives you a different perspective on me.
I love this so much. Cuz it's funny. I'm always interested. The thing that motivates me is finding out what motivates other people, which is kind of a conundrum, but that's what it is. And so I'm always interested what motivates people and and that creative impulse, because it's such a slippery thing. It doesn't look the same in anybody, from start to finish. And you can be
Mhm.
taught, I mean, you can be taught to write, you can be taught to write a book, you can be taught to play music, you can be taught to sculpt, you can be taught, and you can, if you spend enough time at it, you're probably going to get some level of proficiency. If it takes you the 10,000 hours, the 10 years or whatever, if you do it every
Mhm.
day, chances are, even if you didn't have a natural talent for it, you're going to figure out some tricks along the way. But for the folks that have that creative impulse from the start, and they have to figure out what it is that they're going to do to make that thing come through, I always think that that is so fascinating, because I don't know that there was a point in my life where I didn't want to be a musician. And I was writing songs that I was singing in front of my whole school by the time I was in fourth grade. I was literally standing up in the auditorium, right before lunch, and the nuns are going, Gina has a new song, and it's about the Virgin Mary, right? Of course it was, because I knew my audience. Um, and all these years later, I'm still writing about the goddess. Um,
Mhm.
so I mean, I don't ever remember a time when this wasn't going to be my medium, right? I and I don't remember a time when there weren't voices in my head telling me stories, and I knew that I couldn't talk about them when I was young.
Hmm.
I knew that I couldn't talk about them because that would be way too much like possession, and I grew up Catholic, and they'd have
Mhm.
just tried to exercise those voices or not do something that dramatic. But I knew that it was wrong according to the world that I was growing up in. But I
Yeah, and I
didn't have a
grew.
yeah,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead. No, go
No,
ahead.
I grew up in one of those fringe Christian denominations where speaking in tongues was acceptable.
Cool.
It's a little weird sometimes. especially considering I grew up in two branches of that particular denomination. So I had the evangelical and the traditional kind of in conflict with each other. And then you had the branch Davidians.
Whoa.
Yeah, grew up
Whoa.
Seventh-day Adventist.
Whoa.
And
Lucky you.
my father was a lay minister. My mother was the head deaconess of the church. My brother, who's closest in age to he and I both were junior deacons. And well, let's see here. He's a satanic atheist, and I'm an ordained pagan minister now.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. That is
And
so
we live under the
interesting.
same roof.
Hey, right?
We would have killed each other 10 years ago living under the same roof, but it
Wow.
is what it is. He goes off on his own little things. His creativity is he's doing video stuff like TikTok and what have you. And he had to overcome a disability also
Wow.
in order to do that. He has a very distinctive stutter. You don't hear it though when he's doing his video work or he's in management with the company he works for. His employees don't know it.
Wow. Wow.
And it's like, we both had to overcome something. And, growing up in the 80s and early 90s, they didn't really diagnose learning disabilities accurately.
Right.
And if you were already in your teens, they wouldn't even consider you for a learning disability. It's
Yeah,
like,
you
oh
made it
no,
this far.
you made it this far. You don't have ADHD. You're not on the autism spectrum, nothing like that. And I'm just, I look back over everything. It's like my dad probably would have been considered on the spectrum if that had been a thing in the 40s and 50s.
My goodness. Wow. Do you think
And he
sometime
was a creative as well.
was he really?
Yeah, when he was in college, he wrote science fiction.
Oh, wow.
And
That's very cool.
somewhere, my brother and I have one of his short stories that he wrote when he was in college that I think was like in the college paper or something like that.
Yeah.
That we're going to take it and expand upon it and
Oh,
publish it, if for no other reason than for his 7 children and 20 some odd grandchildren and all the great grandchildren and the great greats that are coming along.
that's awesome. You know, my mom wrote poetry and short stories her entire life up until the point where she developed Alzheimer's and couldn't
Mm-hmm.
write a sentence anymore. And that's literally the day that I figured out that something was really going on with her and it wasn't just her getting old and forgetful. Um, I said, Mom, I haven't seen you write anything in a while. She says, I can't put a sentence together. And I thought about that after the fact and realized, she was a creative her whole life. She hid it. She didn't share it with the world. She shared it with us, but she
Mm-hmm.
did not share it outside the family. And I finally just went through all of her short stories that go back like 50 years and put them in an anthology for the family. And I don't know if
Mm-hmm.
I'll ever do anything with it. And I still have to work on her poetry because that's going to be a huge prospect because she was writing poetry by the time she was like 4 years old. She was writing little tiny poems, and
Mm-hmm.
I have all of that in like binder that I finally condensed it down to one copy of everything. Um, but I sometimes wonder, in light of her getting Alzheimer's and all of that, I sometimes wonder who I will be if I cannot create anymore. Scares me a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
you
Oh yeah,
know?
it's like one of my biggest fears is losing the ability to speak.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, I communicate rather well in the written word. A simple Facebook comment is, like a paragraph or two for me. Sometimes it's like, help, I'm talking and I can't shut up, which is what happens sometimes when I'm talking verbally. But if I lost the ability to speak or if I lost the ability to hear, I
Yeah.
don't know what I would do. There's ways to get around, losing my sight when it comes to enjoying what it is that I do. I love to read. Well, there's audiobooks.
Right.
Not necessarily the same thing. It all depends. Maybe I could learn Braille. I don't know. But, well, with the lack of feeling in my fingertips, that might not be a good thing. But I love listening to music so much, which is one of the reasons why you and I hit it off in the beginning, I think, is because I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, hey, a new musician to listen to. Oh my goodness, some of your songs just blow me away still, even off of the first album, still blow me away.
Oh, thanks. You're sweet. Yeah, but it does. There is that tiny little thing in me that says, what will you do when you can't do X anymore?
Mm,
And I'm getting to a point in my life where traveling and touring as hardcore as I did is probably not going to be possible in another 5 years.
mm,
Discounting the whole COVID thing where I can't tour anyway right now. This is a dry
yeah.
run for 5-6 years from now when I really can't be on the road 9 months straight and sleeping in my truck and all the things that you
And
do when you're on the road and
mm,
not going home.
yeah.
Um, I can live with, obviously I can live with losing toes. I can live with being sick. I can live with a whole lot of things disappearing from my life. But I think that if I couldn't put the notes together and the lyrics together, it would, it would, I mean, I don't know who I would be then. I think I would forget who I was, not just forget how to do the thing, how to be a creative, but if I can't create, I think that kind of makes me disappear completely at some point.
Mm,
I don't know. That's a weird thing. I went there.
yeah. Okay, you went there. You went there. I've got a friend who's actually kind of going through that right now.
Oh, wow.
He's been a creative in one way or another for longer than I've known him, much longer than I've known him. And he has a bacterial infection that if they can't control it, he's either going to lose some of his cognitive abilities or he's going to lose his life.
Wow. Yeah.
But he's, still trying to do his thing. He's not writing so much.
Mm-hmm.
He's a poet, does slam poetry, did slam poetry before COVID. Um, has, some stuff published here, there, and elsewhere. But he's turned to, instead of doing the written word and
Mm-hmm.
the spoken word, to visual arts,
Oh, cool.
which is something that he can do with his goddaughter,
Nice.
who is becoming a nice little creative of her own. She's, I think, 6 now, and just is learning from him everything that she can. She's not neurotypical. Most of the children that I know anymore are not neurotypical children.
Yeah.
Uh, my 2 youngest nieces, they're sisters 20 years apart, and they're both on the spectrum. Different
Really?
mothers, same father.
Wow.
They're both on the spectrum. One of them, she's got a degree in uh, something to do with visual arts and advertising. Uh, the exact wording
Mm-hmm.
flew out of my brain, but she does her thing. She does it really well. And then there's her little sister, who we haven't figured out where she's going to go, if she's going to go creatively yet,
Yeah.
other than, well, we know she's a natural medium.
Oh, wow. So she's got something speaking through her.
Yeah, her best friend, since she was like 2, nobody could see, but they could feel.
Interesting.
And she sometimes will camp out in the closet at night with him and play
Oh,
games.
oh, yay. Yeah.
Oh, he's perfectly fine. He's perfectly fine. He's I think like 6 years old. It was the
That's
age
cool.
that he was when he died.
That's
Yeah, now we're
totally
getting
cool.
into the woo.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Which I tend
Oh,
to do
that's
that from
awesome.
time to time.
Very cool. So wow, this is so much fun. So I guess I should let you do some shameless self promotion here. Where can people find your books?
You can find me on Amazon. That's the
Excellent.
easiest way to find me.
Are they
And
available on Kindle and in hardback, or not
almost
hardback, but
everything is
paper?
available in paperback and Kindle.
Excellent.
Everything's available in Kindle, but some
Excellent.
things I've never put into
Printed.
print.
Okay.
I've got two science fiction short stories that were in anthologies that when I got the publishing rights back, I re-released them almost immediately just to Kindle, just to
Excellent.
keep them out there.
Excellent.
Um, let's see here. So yeah, and make sure you spell Philip correctly. It's Philipp.
PP.
It's
Yes.
it's an odd spelling to it. Uh, my father's family was a little weird to begin with, I guess, because it's traditional family spelling there.
I like it.
And you can also find some of my stuff as Joseph Castle there on Facebook, and that's Joseph with an F, Castle with a K.
Okay.
And P.I. Stolpe, it's Stoulpe.
Okay.
And that's one of 17 variations on my mother's maiden name, and her maiden name is only 5 letters long. Her version of it.
Her version of it. That's awesome. That's
Uh,
awesome.
yeah, you'll also find my nonfiction in anthologies.
Excellent.
The Witch's Cauldron, which was one of the projects that Laura Tempest Zackroft did a few
Yeah.
years back. I've got a short little, like, 1-page thing in there, which is using your cauldron or your burning pot for meditation.
Nice.
I've got something in the Pagan Leadership Anthology, which I'm not sure if that's currently in print, but there's still copies available via Amazon.
Cool.
Um, and that was one that Shauna Ora Knight and Taylor Elwood
Taylor
did.
Elwood. Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm. And I'm also in Finding the Masculine in Goddess's Spiral,
Nice.
which was an anthology that, I just forgot his name. Let me see if I can pull it up real quick here, because I've actually got all the book covers into one thing here. Will I be able to
Excellent.
actually read this here? Eric Dupree.
Okay. Okay.
And that was through Megalithica something.
Awesome.
Wow. Taylor used to be the managing editor for the nonfiction section of that
Right.
publisher.
Right. 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 Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I
I
think
am
that's
work.
when I met him. He's
Mm,
pretty amazing, dude.
yeah.
So yeah. So
And of course, you can
please,
hear me on the radio.
yes. What I want you to do is to send me links
Hmm.
to where people can find your books. To your are you doing guest blogging, or do you have your own blog that you're
I don't have
working
anything currently
currently right
active
now? Okay.
with blogging.
Okay. And then
Um,
links to where they can hear you on the radio.
yeah.
That would be awesome, because I
Mm.
think people would love to pop in and hear you pontificate a little bit, and to share your musical interests, which I
Mhm.
think is really cool. You have a
Yeah, it's
really
like
broad range.
on Murphy's Magic Mess, I don't get to pontificate very much.
No.
Sometimes I pantificate, but we do uh, a series every Sabbath. We have a ritual soundtrack.
Cool. Yes.
So there's
Yes.
like 60 to 90 minutes of essentially uninterrupted music, which is from the start of whatever you think of as a ritual. It's kind of Wiccan-esque, and calling to the circle, casting the circle, and all that, all the way through to the end of closing down the circle.
Right.
And it's a ritual experience if you get yourself into the right mindset.
That's really awesome.
And my muse is the one that started doing that with me, even though she's 800 miles away.
Yeah.
Gotta love technology. I mean, I'm in the middle of the country, and you're down in Florida.
I know, this is so wonderful, and everybody's jealous of my weather.
I don't know. We had 60s today. I'm fine
Did
with that in
you?
March.
Oh, that is lovely.
It'll dip down below freezing tonight, but that's okay.
If you're inside, that's okay. Indeed, indeed. Well, is there anything else you want to share with everybody before we cut out of here for the evening?
Uh, Not right offhand. Just check for what I've got out there already. There's going to be more coming real soon.
Awesome.
If you've read the first three books, then you know what's going on and why somebody really wants me to get going. I'll give you a hint. It's supposed to take 9 to 10 months, not 4 years.
Between so do you think that you're gonna have time now, or you're carving out time to write and let that creative thing happen for this next book?
I've had a change in employment circumstances to where
Oh,
I'm
tell
not
me.
having to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning
Oh,
and working through till who knows when in the afternoon and being on call 24/7.
oh,
I'm
congratulations.
Yeah, I just hope that I can actually turn things around to where I'm not leaning on my brother as much as he's afraid I'm going to. I'm like,
You know what
hey,
though?
he
You
leaned on me for almost 2 years.
There you go. There you
I
go.
can
That's
lean
what
on him
family's
for a
for.
little bit.
That's
Yeah.
what family's for.
Yeah. So hopefully by not killing myself working for the man,
Yeah.
I can
Yeah.
actually work for myself and get all these different voices the chance to speak.
Indeed.
Because I've
Indeed.
got Sandra and Elaine bashing at the back of my head, and I've got Connor, who I had never mentioned before. He comes up in book 3 at the end, wanting his story told.
Nice.
And his, I'm going to have to rely heavily on my Muse for because he's based on her deceased husband,
Interesting.
who I've known from a little bit longer than I've known her. I met him like literally a week before I met her.
Wow. Well, very cool. I'm looking forward to seeing how all of this shakes down. And I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for hanging out and chatting with me. This has been wonderful. It's been great seeing your face. I miss people. And
Oh
I'm an
yeah.
introvert and I miss people. So
Hmm. I love people from a distance.
yeah, yeah.
It's
Well,
like,
it's a Zoom distance, but it'll be okay.
uh, yeah,
All
it's like,
right, Philip.
yeah. So thank you very much. This is you. You're helping me kind of restart my creative process by doing this.
Get it done. Get it
Oh yeah,
done.
get it done, get it done, get it done.
All right, Philip. We'll talk to you later. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.